Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Dog Day Chess. In this episode I'm going to talk about the Greek gift sacrifice, which is also known as the classical bishop sacrifice on h7. Now this is a slightly more advanced topic than the ones I've covered in previous episodes. The Greek gift sacrifice is a thematic attack on the castled king, and I have a good example of it in one of the games that I've played. So I'm going to show you a part of that game so that you can see how the sacrifice works. Now we're picking this up at move 5. I'm playing white and it's black's move, and black develops his knight to e7. Not f6, which is the typical developing square for the knight. And this is important because from f6 rather, the knight would be able to defend the h7 square, which is the square where the sacrifice will take place, but from e7 he will not be able to defend that square. So I started to see the potential for doing this, the Greek gift sacrifice at this point. So I started to play into it. I moved my bishop to d3 so that it would aim at h7. I had the feeling that black was preparing to castle kingside, and so I'm hoping that that's what would happen. And sure enough, that is what happened. Black does castle kingside, and so I follow that up by moving my pawn up, clearing the line of attack for my bishop to h7. Okay. Now at this point, black should have done something to defend against the technique, the sacrifice. He should have possibly moved the knight up to block it, or maybe push a pawn, or maybe there are better ways. But instead black develops his knight. So now I'm ready to do the Greek gift sacrifice. I play bishop captures h7, check. Okay, and black accepts the sacrifice. Black captures my bishop. So now I follow it up by moving my knight to g5, check, and at this point black has a few options. Okay, so we'll start by looking at what actually happened in the game. In the game, black moved his king out to g6, which is actually the best move for black. It's the most stubborn resistance that black can put up. So from here, I followed it up by bringing my pawn up to h4, preparing to push it one more square to check the king. Black answers by trying to create a little bit of interference. That's not going to be enough. I push my pawn check, and now the king has only one square to move to get out of check, and that is h6. But at h6, the king is setting himself up for a discovered check, okay, by my bishop. So I do that. I move my knight out of the way, checking the king, and from here the knight is attacking the queen. So the king moves out of check, and that leaves me the queen. And I ended up winning the game, and I'll be honest with you, I was just beaming for the next couple of days. This was so exciting to be able to do the Greek gift sacrifice and to have it work out the way it did. So I thought that was great. So let's go back to the point where the king captures the bishop and the knight checks it. And from this point, if instead, we'll look through a few other scenarios, if instead of moving out to g6, the king moves to, say, h8, the corner square, well, this is immediate death for the king, because from here I'll move my queen out to h5, check, and the king has to move, and then queen to h7 is mate. Okay, so let's go back and we'll play through another scenario. If from this position the king decides to move back to g8, then again I move my queen out, and black has a few options here. Let's just look at one where he moves his rook over to give the king a little bit of space. And so from here I can capture the f7 pawn, check. King moves into the corner, and my knight can capture that pawn, creating two attacks. One is that the knight is attacking the queen, and the other is that there's the threat of queen capturing g7 with mate. Okay, now black can defend the mate by bringing his knight out, but that leaves me the queen. Okay, so let's look at one more scenario after the capture and the check. where the king moves out to h6. Well, from here the king is just automatically setting himself up for the discover check. So from here I can just move my knight out of the way, king is in check, and then the knight wins the queen. Okay. So, of course, the sacrifice can backfire on you if you don't follow it up with the right moves, or if the conditions for it are not right in the first place. Some of those conditions that have to be in place are that your knight needs to be able to get to g5 so that it can follow up the capture of the bishop with a check. Another thing is that your queen needs to have mobility along this diagonal so that she can get to h5, as you saw earlier, or in some scenarios she might need to get to g4. And another condition that's often required, although it wasn't required in this case, is that the bishop be guarding the g5 square so that when your knight jumps to it to check the king, the bishop is protecting the knight. Because if this knight were somewhere else, then at that point the queen could have captured my knight. So it's often required that the bishop is defending it. Now, in terms of the defending side, and I mentioned this earlier, it's important that this knight is not able to defend h7, okay, which it would be able to do if it were developed on f6. Okay. There's a book called The Art of Attack in Chess by Vladimir Vukovic, and that book has a whole chapter dedicated to the Greek gift sacrifice. So if you want to learn more about it, that's a good place to start. And also, if you search for it on the internet, you'll find a lot of good material on the Greek gift sacrifice. So now that you've seen it, I hope that you'll study it a bit more and practice out some of the scenarios on your own, and maybe even use it in one of your games if the conditions are right for it. So I wish you good luck with that, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.